Prince Harry has been in the UK this week at the Royal Courts of Justice, just a stone's throw away from our studio, to challenge the government's decision to downgrade his security after he and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020. Now, this case has been going on for nearly 4 years, Jack. What's the latest? It was an eventful Tuesday and Wednesday in the Court of Appeal, and worth pointing out, it's the first time we've seen a royal in the Court of Appeal. What's been going on?
So basically, Harry filed this case originally to try to overturn the decision to strip him of his police protection team, which was taken in February 2020. He says it's not safe for him in Britain or for Meghan and the kids, Archie and Lilibet, to come to Britain without a police protection team to defend them. The brick wall that he's coming up against is that the Home Office say, well, they don't agree. They think that they're happy to give him a police team on certain occasions, predominantly when he's invited, he has an official invite to an official royal event. Other than that, he's on his own. And they say they have every right to make that decision. Now, what happened was Harry filed not one but 2 High Court lawsuits against the British government. He lost both of them, and now he's appealing. So it started off being this quite expansive case where he was saying he was willing to pay for his own police team. It's now been crunched down to effectively one quite technical point, which is whether the Home Office should have done an additional risk assessment to determine the threat level against him. He says it's written into their policy that they had to do that. They say we decided that the policy wasn't prepared for a royal family member to suddenly up sticks, quit Britain and go and live in a foreign country. So they needed to create a system, a new policy designed just for Harry.
Because it was such an extraordinary circumstance.
So unforeseeable.
It's worth pointing out as well, isn't it, that Harry has offered to pay for this protection, which is, police escorts, that sort of level of surveillance that he might not get with private security. So why is that not an option?
Yeah, it's fundamentally different. They can carry guns. Nobody else in Britain can. They can take him through red traffic lights, which means they can get away from the paparazzi. No private security team can do that legally. The reason he can't, the police say, they simply cannot be for hire. They're supposed to provide the same service to everybody without fear or favour. And it is going down a dark and slippery path if they start letting rich people buy their way into a superior level of protection from the police. Now, personally, if we were living in the land of milk and honey, I would have absolutely no objection to Harry having a police protection team. The bit of it that I do find genuinely difficult is that I think right now ordinary people are getting such a terrible service from the police that it does stick in the craw a little bit, the idea that Harry could come in and use, even if you leave the money out of it, use his privileged position to get a level of basically souped up police protection. I mean, there was a point, back when this decision was first made, where Harry was able to get himself a meeting with the Cabinet Secretary, the most senior civil service in Britain, to try to discuss his police protection team. Now, a big part of what Harry's lawyers have been saying in court is that the bespoke system created for him, the way in which he was treated as exceptional, led to a negative outcome for him, and that what he really wants is to be treated like anybody else. But I think he's kind of assuming that being treated like anybody else would get him a better outcome. I think it might actually get him a worse outcome. Well,
of course, we don't know what the outcome is yet. I mean, we've got to wait for that. But interestingly, only some of this case was made public, and then the public had to leave, and the rest was private. What was that all about? So
part of what Harry's doing here is he's partially opening a very, very private box here for the royals, which is that they don't want anybody to know very much at all about their police protection arrangements, because they consider it to put them at risk. The more you talk about it publicly and the more people know, you're just giving information to people who might want to harm royal family members. So there's certain aspects of this case where the court has basically said that just cannot become public. We cannot allow people to know the exact police protection provision for this member of the royal family or that member of the royal family. We cannot allow people to know exactly how that service functions and how it operates.
Of course, because it would compromise other members of the royal family who still have the privilege of that protection. Afia, just before it went private, there was a member of the public, wasn't there, a woman who caused a bit of a kerfuffle, and sure enough, Harry's security had to swing into action, which I suppose endorses his point that he does need different security to everyone else. What happened?
Yeah, there was a woman who stood up and shouted something like, "I support you, Harry." It wasn't me, by the way. But she stood up and shouted, "I support you, Harry," and then something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, but, the British royal family should protect him, something like that. Yeah. And like you said, his security had to intervene. And I think that there is so many important points that we have to consider when we are talking about security for not not just Prince Harry, but the royal family. But I think what he's also arguing that wasn't taken into consideration is the different security arrangements that he may have compared to other members of the royal family. The threats he may face are different.
Having served on the front line, you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But also because you've had people who have been jailed in the past for making threats against him, which are based on him, apparently, they say, him being a race traitor. You had a teenager who was jailed in 2019 for making threats against Prince Harry, saying he was a race traitor. You had 2 podcasters who were jailed in January 2024 for 15 years apiece for making threats against Prince Harry and Prince Archie, saying that they should be killed, again, because Prince Harry was a race traitor. On that podcast, Islamophobic, homophobic and racist remarks were made. And Prince Harry's legal team were also arguing that these things are not taken into consideration, along with things like the car chase that occurred in 2023. They're not taken into consideration when considering his security. And while I agree with you that, you know, at a time where the public purse is so stretched, we don't necessarily want to stretch it even more by having to pay or having the police having to do extra work to look after Prince Harry, as it may be seen. But it's also in the public interest to keep somebody safe, to keep a VIP safe on the streets of London, Birmingham, wherever they may be.
Let's not, of
because
course,
you don't want
forget,
other people to be injured if someone's trying to attack him.
This is, of course, not his home anymore, isn't it? And Elsa, I think it's fascinating, isn't it, that we are now only seeing Prince Harry, once the most popular member of the royal family, actually only in Britain when it comes to a court case. Were you surprised to see him turn up for this?
Very. I cannot remember, certainly when I worked for the royal household, a member of the royal family ever going to court, attending court, so utterly unusual. And also, it has a knock-on effect on the institution as well. What you don't want to see is members of the royal family in a sort of a big legal battle. So I would have expected there'll be some sighs and some raised eyebrows.
Exasperation. Jack, of course, we didn't know that Harry was going to turn up in court, and I'm just wondering if that might have been because a certain person's podcast was launching on this day. It was a busy day in the Sussex's household. What do you think?
Well, maybe he wanted to give her a bit of space to launch her podcast. Yeah, totally possible. The other possibility is that he thought it might influence the judge, that he might be able to kind of persuade the judge of how much this really meant to him and how much he cares, that he would fly all the way over from America just for this. But yeah, I mean, I could well believe that he might want to just get out of the maelstrom and the chaos of a podcast launch and do his own thing somewhere else.
Well, certainly his appearance here showed just how important this case is. And his case, he sort of said, you know, this is a life-death situation for him. You pointed out earlier the threats that have been made against him. And, you know, what Harry is saying is that he just doesn't feel he can bring his family back to Britain without this protection. And there is going to be a point, hopefully not in the near future, but we know his father is battling cancer. We know that he will have to come back at some point. We've got the Invictus Games in Birmingham in July in 27. This is, you know, still home to all intents and purposes alongside California. And I suppose, what does it mean for him and his family? If he loses this, well, what's going to happen?
If he doesn't manage to have this decision overturned, if it doesn't go his way, then it's going to be hugely disappointing for Prince Harry. I mean, this is the birthplace of Archie. It's somewhere where he would want his children to spend time, you know, with their grandparents, with their cousins. But if it doesn't go his way, if he doesn't get the enhanced security that he feels that he needs, and of course that his wife and children need, we simply will not see them here in the United Kingdom. And I think that's a real shame. I think it will be a shame for them. I think it will be a shame for the extended family. You know, the Invictus Games, we would love to see them all there, but I just don't think it would happen if the security is not enhanced. And like you have alluded to, I mean, we know that the King is battling cancer. You know, if inevitably there is a state funeral or something to attend, will they be able to do that? If the security is not there, it doesn't look like it.
Well, we also understand, although no word officially from Buckingham Palace, because of course they don't advise on private meetings, but Elsa, we do understand that there wasn't a meeting between the King and his son, even though there was a brief opportunity for them to have crossed paths because, of course, the King was on his way to Italy. But there were a few hours when they were both in the UK together.
So it's my understanding that Prince Harry flew over on the Sunday, and the King and Queen Camilla were going to Italy for the state visit on the Monday. So there was an opportunity for a brief meeting. And considering his father had actually had a brief unplanned stay in hospital the previous week, one would have thought that, you know, Harry would have liked to have seen him and made sure he was okay, but clearly that didn't happen.
And I think, you know, as you say, Afia, it's a great shame.